In this video, we're going to show you how to harness the full power of the Avalonix Premium Series IP cameras. We're going to be showing you how to use one or multiple cameras to do snapshot-based recording to a NAS that either has NFS or FTP enabled, or specifically SFTP, which is the secure version of the FTP protocol. So to follow this video, you need to make sure you have a server such as a NAS, Linux machine, or a Windows machine that has NFS and SFTP enabled. I'll show you both functions, how you can use NFS or SFTP to save snapshots to a server that could be in the cloud or on your local network. So in my case, I'm using a server that's in my local network, and I'm going to be using the local IP address that's in the same subnet of 192.168.1 to save files from my camera over to my server. You could essentially have a server in the cloud on the internet, and you can save snapshots from one or multiple cameras to that server, granted you have NFS or SFTP enabled on that. So here I'm showing you one camera that I have outside and another one looking at the street in front of us, and you can see they're both seeing video simultaneously. So then the first step of this video, I'm going to show you how you can enter in your server credentials into the camera so it can save files to the server. You would go to Settings, Storage, and then Destination. Depending on the model of the IP camera that you purchase from us, among the Avalonix series that has this web interface that you see here, you can select to save to either an FTP or a NAS. I already have NAS selected. Your camera may have just local selected. That means it would save to a micro SD card. My camera has no SD card on it at the moment. I'm saving to a NAS. So under the record section, the left-hand side menu, this is for video, and the right-hand side is for snapshot. So this camera does let me do both video and snapshot recording. So you could follow this tutorial to do both if you'd like. Now I've selected NAS. And under the NAS tab, I've filled in the settings to my server. I have a NAS server that has NFS enabled, and this is the IP address of the server, and this is the remote directory for that server where I'd like to write the files to and enable it. Now I'm going to default it to show you how I programmed all these settings. So in your case, it would look like this. You would first go to NAS, you type in the server settings, you would type in your IP address for your server. This is the IP address of my server. And then secondly, you would type in the directory where you'd like to save all the files to, and then you would hit save. This is the folder on my NAS where I'll be writing the files to. Now notice the enable button is grayed out. You have to go back to path. I'm going to just do right now snapshot recording. Under snapshot, I'm going to enable schedule for NAS, event for NAS, and alarm for NAS. What that means is any snapshot that's recorded using the schedule method, event, or alarm based method, it would save it to the NAS. Event means anything like AI based detection, IVS rules such as tripwire intrusion, or motion detection. Scheduled is continuous recording all the time. It could be interval based snapshots at a certain interval you set, which I'm going to show you in a second. And then alarm is if your camera has an alarm input on it, any alarm trigger based recording would then fall under this category. Now they're all going to the same folder. I hit save. It says succeeded. So then I go to NAS. The enable button will become available to me. I hit save. It says this might be a risk. Do you want to enable it? I hit OK. Now I'm going to go back to my server. I'm going to refresh it. And I see that a file or folder has been written now to the NAS. And I go in there and it's starting to write something. So this is just entering the credentials for your server in here. That's one part. What I just showed you was NFS. now I'm going to show you how to do it through SFTP. Under the FTP tab, there's a second method of connecting your camera to your NAS. Now, depending on the model of your camera and its firmware version, you may have SFTP available or FTP available for recording. SFTP is the secure version, encrypted way of transmitting data, and this is my server's IP address, the port the SFTP server is running on, and the username and password for my user on my server for accepting an SFTP user, and the folder name where I'll be writing to. Now notice on my particular server, the NAS directory, even though it's this and that are the same directory, the way they're written is different. Under a NAS, you have to write the full path name. So for NFS, basically, you have to write the full path name, full directory path for this to write to, versus an FTP. What happens is the user is jailed, basically, or rooted into a certain subdirectory where it starts from, and this was the correct folder for mine. Now, if you don't understand these concepts, this is what's going to be a hurdle for you to get your recording to work. That's what you need to figure out, what's the correct way on your server, and you'll need to test it and ensure you know the correct folder names to enter, and of course the username and passwords. This video does not show you how to set up a NAS or an FTP server or an NFS server. This is just how to enter the correct credentials into our cameras to get it to work. Now I'm going to hit test, and it says my SFTP server test was a success. I'm going to hit save, and this is, notice, is not enabled. I'm going to go to path. I'm going to tell it, hey, listen, I want to save to FTP, any snapshots. I hit save, I go back to FTP, and this just changed into allowing me to enable it, and then I hit save. Now this does have an option that if you had a micro SD card, if the FTP server was not available for some reason because of network disconnection or the server wasn't working anymore, if you put a micro SD, any snapshots you're doing or recording you're doing for video can be saved in emergency to the local micro SD card that you have in there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and refresh my directory. I'm going to delete it to show you that I actually have a connection happening between my camera and my server using SFTP. When I refresh it, it wrote another directory with the camera name. Now if you have multiple cameras, I'll show you in a bit what that will look like. Right now I just have one camera. So far I've showed you how to enter in the credentials for your server using SFTP or NFS. Now I'm going to show you how to actually start recording snapshots. There are two ways to record snapshots. So in this section, this is the second section, let's say, I'm going to show you how to set snapshot-based recording from our Avalonix Premium Series cameras. What you would go to is, if you wanted to do continuous recording, you go under camera and video and you select snapshot, and in here you can choose the snapshot type. So you're actually, this section lets you select the resolution or set the resolution and interval for either general, which is continuous based recording, or event based recording. In my event-based recording, it's saving at a 1440p resolution at a quality of 5, which is 1 below best, and interval of 1 second. So if an event's happening and it's 10 seconds long, I should have 10 snapshots, 1 for every second. Under general, here, which is continuous recording, I have a 1440p set, quality of 4, and interval, I customized it. And when you set a customized interval, although you can select from 1 through 7 seconds, you can also set a custom interval anywhere from 1 second to 50,000 seconds. So if you're doing, let's say, a time-lapse capture of an event, the snapshot-based recording method is a preferred way of doing time-lapse capture of an event, so that you can then composite it together using an editing software, such as a video software, to put all the images together to make your own video. This doesn't make a video for you that's time-lapse. This is just saving snapshots to your server. Hit save. So now that I've set a preferred interval of snapshot recording for general and event-based recording, to actually start recording, I need to go into storage and set a schedule. Record is for video-based recording, and you'll see a tab for snapshot. This is easily missed, so make sure if you're recording snapshots, you switch over to this tab for snapshot. When you get a new camera, it'll say event, and you'll basically see red and yellow lines all over here. That's for event and alarm-based recording. That's how it's default set from the factory. I'm going to set continuous interval-based recording every 10 seconds according to my configuration on the previous screen. So I'm going to select all and then hit general, and I want all green lines throughout all the days. Hit save. And then under destination, I'm going to go under the path, make sure it's still set to FTP here, and then FTP is enabled. And then when I go back to my NAS, which only had a file named DVR work directory written to it initially when I enabled SFTP, when I refresh it, I'm going to see now a folder in there, and then a picture folder. And now I'm going to see pictures in there, and these are snapshots being saved by the camera every 10 seconds. And this is interval-based recording. So I've shown you snapshots at interval-based recording. I'll show you also in this video how to do event-based snapshot recording. Going back to schedule, first change your schedule from just all being green. If let's say you want to do motion-based recording, hit all, hit event, uncheck the general. Now you just see all yellow lines. If you have a camera that has an alarm input, let's say for example you want to tie in a motion detector, that's physical motion detector, or you're tying in even a light switch to enable recording, you could hit alarm, hit all, and have yellow and red lines all over for snapshot. Hit save. Now this is the schedule. Under destination, make sure you have your FTP enabled still, or your NFS, whichever you're writing with, and then FTP selected here, or NAS if you were selecting NFS for recording. And going back to my video settings, under snapshot, I have general set to 10, but I'm not using general anymore. I'm using event. So now it's going to save a snapshot at one less than the best quality at every 1 second. So to recap here, I've enabled a schedule for event-based recording, and I've shown what's the quality of my snapshots being saved for event-based recording. There's only one last thing to do, which is to select an event. If you don't go under video detection of some sort, such as video detection, which is motion detection that's pixel-based, smart motion detection, which actually some cameras have that allow the camera to pick out human and motor vehicles and only record at that time, or do something such as IVS, where you can draw some lines and intrusion boxes and the camera can record based on that. Unless you do one of those three things, you're not going to have recording happening. The easiest one to do is video detection. And by default, when you enable this, you have to go through the period, make sure that all of it is highlighted as green if you want event detection happening throughout the whole week, every day of the week, every hour of the week. And then under area, select the area you want motion detection to occur. If I do remove all, I can then redraw my regions. The first region I have is red. You could draw the whole thing in red again if you wanted. Or the camera allows you, the Avalonix Premium Series, allow you to set up different regions using these colors and different sensitivities. You can change the sensitivities as you like for your preferences as to what region will have what type of motion detection, how sensitive it'll be, and what's the threshold that will trigger a motion event being recognized by the camera. So I've drawn two regions here, and this little bar graph here kind of shows me what events are triggering it. So if I go to the yellow where the car was passing, you'll see that it triggered the motion event here. If I increase the threshold, that means more pixels have to be moving in the picture to trigger the motion. Because if I set it this high, then these cars would not trigger that motion. I have to set it low enough to match what the camera is seeing at that distance and the number of pixels that are grouped together to represent the object being within the threshold of this. I hope you understand that aspect of it, because if you just set this too high, you're not going to get any motion. Set this too low, you're not going to get any motion. So you want to make sure you have a good balance of your sensitivity and your threshold that's triggering the motion in the picture. And of course, I'm using these boxes to specify regions of motion as well. And when you draw this, I suggest you do not overlap them, because that'll just confuse the camera and may cause errors as well. So once I've set my region, I can hit record, which will record video if I wanted to record video. But right now I don't have any video recording set on the camera. It can even send an email if you wanted to configure that. We will cover that in a different video. But in this case, I want to make sure I have snapshot selected. I'm going to leave record enabled, because in another video I'm going to show you how you can use the record function to save to FTP or NFS. Here, the most important thing is you enable your motion and you hit snapshot. Hit save. To recap, I did first storage, schedule, set my snapshot under the snapshot tab to make sure that event and alarm is enabled for 24/7, 7 days a week. Destination, set the snapshot to my preferred method of recording here, which in this case I'm doing an FTP demonstration. It would work equally well on an NFS. And then I go under camera, video, snapshot tab, and select my resolution for recording the snapshot. So while I've been talking, the camera's been recording to the FTP server. I go back to it, I enter the folder, and I see a lot more snapshots now. And I'll see that I have a snapshot every second, and that's happening because every time there's motion happening, the camera starts taking a snapshot every second. So there's been a lot written as I've been making the video. So every time any pixels change in the picture, it starts recording it. So here you can see this car. I'm going backwards. So the camera will take a snapshot every second. So it depends on how fast that object is moving and how it takes that snapshot. So you do have to manually look at the pictures using snapshot-based recording. You have to poke around through them. So every time, every minute or so, whenever the motion is happening, there's a different car that I see here. So that's snapshot-based recording now that I've shown you on an event-based method. If you wanted to, you could even do smart motion detection, where you go back to video detection, go to period, make sure it's all selected, go to area, delete all for all the regions that you may have set. Go back to the red region and select all of them. Hit save, and hit save again. Go to smart motion, enable it. Now, so once I deleted all the pictures, the camera is continuing to write more images to the folder. And as you can see here, there's a snapshot happening here. So there's a truck passing by over there. Now, snapshots are dependent on the speed of the objects passing by. You know, sometimes the object may have already kind of crossed the road by the time it wrote this snapshot. So this is not as great as video, but it's certainly helpful for certain scenarios that customers do not need a video for. Now you can get really fancy with snapshots if you wanted to. In this last part of the video, I'm going to show you some advanced methods. Now I'm going to show you how you can get very fancy with snapshot recording by using a second camera. I have one up here. It's live streaming. As you can see, cars passing by. going to go under settings and quickly enter in my settings. And I'm going to go under snapshot. I'm just going to do one every 5 seconds. General recording. Go to storage, schedule. So use this as a way to have an overview of what I did in the other camera. Hit save. Now again, this was record. I need to do it on snapshot. That's a common mistake many people make, so make sure you're not making this mistake as I just did. Make sure you go under snapshot recording if you're doing snapshots and set a schedule there. So now I've done a schedule, and then now I have to go to destination, specify an FTP for it to save to, go back in here in my SFTP and put in my IP address. I'm matching up my settings so they're saving to the same folder. Hit save. Now if you were to save like this, let's see if the camera is able to write to the same directory without overwriting the other one. And it is. The camera actually detected there's another folder that's already existing, so it starts writing using its own working directory and starts writing snapshots in there. Now depending on the firmware model of every camera, it will write to a different named directory. Every camera has a different directory structure, so if you look at the tree here, this camera writes it differently than this one. The PTZ camera writes it differently than my fixed camera. Okay, so it detected a person there, and all I did was for this one, this is it is just a regular general base recording. It's not doing any sort of event-based recording, but you can have both do that. So what I've just shown you is how you can record multiple cameras to your NAS using FTP or NFS. And if you had certain scenarios where you need to change the settings of the video, let's say you're doing high shutter rate recording or something, this is a normal default shutter of a camera. I'm going to go under conditions and exposure inside this camera's web interface, and I can actually control the shutter priority of the camera. I can go to manual and I can set a custom shutter. Now watch as I select it, the picture gets darker. So the shutter is an electronic shutter. Now I set it to 1/100,000. And now, as you can see, the picture is a bit darker. It's necessarily not a high-speed camera, but I have reduced the shutter rate to make it a faster shutter. I can tie up multiple cameras that are, let's say, for example, have an alarm input, where I can tie in a light switch to them and allow them to be triggered by the light switch when I switch it on to take a snapshot. What the alarm snapshot capture is for. I have another camera here that I have focused out in the front of our property, and we're looking at a road passing by. But we're not going to be capturing any motion. We're just going to do an alarm capture. So what I'm going to do is go under settings and show you where the alarm settings are. So certain cameras have under event an alarm section, and you can enable it and use a relay in. This particular camera has 3 alarm inputs. I tied basically a light switch to the first alarm input, and here's what the connections look like on the camera that you need to use. If your alarm panel looks like this on the camera, some cameras have just a 2-lead wire for alarm input. Set the period to 24/7. You can choose to record video or just snapshot. I'm enabled all of them, but I'm just going to be saving snapshots. And there's a relay out option. I'm not using a relay. I'm not sending email. Hit save. The next step is to go into your schedule, go under snapshot, and make sure you set it only to alarm for 24/7 by doing so, and hit save. Wait for that success message. Then under destination, select where you want to write that alarm to. For my case, I'm using my NAS or NFS server to save it into this folder, which happens to correspond to the same directory that I was using before in the video. Under record control, this is only for video. You don't need to do anything here. So as long as you've done your destination path, saved that, done the proper schedule, and went under event and alarm, then you're all set. So now I'm going to show you that in my logs, I can see an alarm event begin and end. So right now it's about 4:40 that has elapsed, and the current time is 4:41. I'm going to ask one of my assistants to trigger the alarm on the camera. And the triggering the alarm is basically I'm flipping a light switch here. And once I do that, it begins an event, and I'm going to ask them to end the event by turning off the light switch. So now when I go into my log, I can see an event began and ended around these times right here. And then another event began, and then I'm going to use the log and search again, and it ended. So I've had 1, 2, 3 event begin and end. When I go to my NAS, I can actually see there's a folder that was created with that timestamp. And here I have some JPEGs of those screenshots, of those snapshots right there. So it began at about 16:42:02, ended, and then began again. I have the snapshot set to take capture every 1 second. I can see those snapshots right here from the camera. So these were all triggered based on an alarm input event. Last thing, go under camera, video. This is under snapshot where you can set an event, the snapshot resolution for event here. In my case, I'm using a full 4 megapixel on there. So in summary, I've showed you how you can set many different features on your IP camera or POV camera. That's the Avalonix series from CCTV Camera World. Hopefully you found this video useful. Thanks for watching.
If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.